Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our final Professor Circle for this semester. As you know, we've been looking at all semester sessions under the umbrella of what we know and what we don't know, and moving forward as it relates to our the new executive orders coming from the new administration. This morning, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Kate Korgan, who is the officer in charge for the Provost area and Senior Vice Provost. She has graciously agreed to do this session as the officer in charge, Chris Heavey, is in Carson City, where we want him to make sure that he's doing the bidding for UNLV with this legislative session. I know that these sessions have been very robust and people generally have a lot of questions. So we're asking that if you would put your questions in the Q&A, then we'll be able to keep track of those questions, and in the time that we have, hopefully be able to answer as many as possible. So having said that, once again, welcome. Thank you again, Dr. Korgan, and I will hand this over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Barlow. I really appreciate it. We were just chatting before many of you joined and saying that I was thanking Dr. Barlow for doing this because it's so timely and so important to have these conversations. And we were also lamenting that we have to be here and having these conversations, right? So let me just start with saying, no one relishes the need to pull so many folks together to have these kinds of conversations about changes that are happening external to our campus that are impacting, you all as faculty and staff, and certainly also our students. So what I thought I'd do today is just share some thoughts from where I sit to tell you sort of how we're looking at things, what we know. There's a whole lot in the bucket of what we don't know. And then I've invited some friends and colleagues who have expertise in different areas related to the shifting federal landscape, and they're each going to share from their perspective sort of what they know and how we're proceeding. And then we'll do, robust time for questions and answers at the end. And I would love to do some listening because, we're so busy running and trying to figure out what's happening, how to respond, and strategically planning to try and protect and promote our values on our campus. That it's I don't hear enough from faculty and students about what you're experiencing, and so that would be helpful during the discussion and Q&A time. So without further ado, I thought I would start just very briefly with some campus updates, because I think how we weather this, these sort of federal changes is really reliant upon, how we're doing all together as an institution. So just very briefly, everyone here knows we're going through campus leadership transition that was unexpected. We, of course, have an officer in charge, that's Chris Heavey, and the Board of Regents came and did a listening tour on Friday. Today is the last day to submit input on that tour, and I'll drop the email in the chat in case anyone wants to submit any written comments. And we expect the Board of Regents to hold a meeting in April and appoint an interim or acting president. At that point, we expect that person, whoever it will be, will then appoint an interim provost. And so I am just keeping the seat warm until we have that interim provost in place. We also have had our CFO step down. That's Casey Wyman. And so we have an interim CFO already appointed. That's Elise Bunkowski. Now, the reason all these quick appointments are really important is not just because the campus has a lot of needs on a day-to-day basis, but we're in the middle of a legislative session, and we are working very hard in a concerted way to try and understand and anticipate and also respond to, sort of the shifting federal landscape. So at the state level, as you know, we're in a legislative session. The state budget is not as robust as we had hoped. The original governor's budget that he submitted in fall was fairly optimistic, and we felt pretty good about it, only to find out that his budget team had over budgeted by many, many, many tens of millions of dollars. And so because of that, there's been a lot of shifting at the start of the session, and we are now at a place where, we're waiting to see where we land. We should know in June or so. From a state budget perspective, I will say that we basically at this point have five major priorities.
It's obvious the attention behind it. But we should note Democrats have
We
actually
might have some live mics. If we could just
in court seat.
Please, everyone, mute yourselves, please.
Donor, but Democrats have actually outraised.
I don't have control. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the five priorities that we are especially focusing on as UNLV and NSHE are cost of living adjustment funding from the state. We had been told that they would pay 80% of the recent 23% increases to state positions. But because of the budget sort of realignment at the state level, they are now talking about maybe only covering 65% of those COLAs that we've already given, which would certainly be an impact to the tune of $20 to $23 million. On the other hand, we have performance pool funding, which rewards caseload growth, basically student graduation. And so we came out very strong, the strongest in the state in caseload growth. And we were expecting to get about $20 or $21 million from that. And so depending on where we land, if we end up at 65% COLA with the performance pool in place, we're going to be about flat, give or take. If we end up at 80% funding with the performance pool, we're going to end up better than flat. We'll have some additional funds in our coffers, and that will really set us up, in a really strong budgetary place for the next 2 years. If both of those don't come through, if for any reason the performance pool isn't funded as we expect, because of the new funding formula proposal that basically freezes funding for the universities and reinvests that funding into the community colleges. We don't expect that to go through, but if that formula went through and we're at 65%, then there might be, sort of less of a positive budget outlook than we had hoped for from the legislature. So it's a lot of moving parts and pieces. So this is one of the big things that we're working on with our government affairs team in Carson. The second big state priority for us is graduate medical education. The third is, and these are in no particular order, but of course, campus security. We have a very significant ask in for funding to support the next round and real true investment in improving our campus security. Mental health is our other category. And the last is the business building. So the Lee School of Business is looking to have a new building. They've needed one for quite some time. And so the proposal is to get 50% of the planning funds to design that building. So it isn't actually the building funds, it's the planning funds. So we're fairly optimistic and working really hard on those five, as well as all the other bills as they arise related to higher education, research, and anything else that that touches our campus community. And there are a lot of those on a daily and weekly basis. So where this leaves us then is thinking about the federal climate. And the federal climate, obviously, is what we're here to do a deeper dive on, because there have been a series of actions that have indicated, I think, to all of us here that we are, working and living and training students in a sector that's under transition. And so from the Department of Education Dear Colleague letter that came out sort of late in the day on Valentine's Day on February 14th, to an Office of Civil Rights letter, which we received about 2 weeks ago, notifying us that we were one of several dozen universities that are under Office of Civil Rights investigation. Clearly, there is a shift in federal support in higher education, and that isn't agnostic. It's really tied to particular types of research, of activities on campus related to DEI. And that definition of DEI has expanded in the last 2 months in ways that, are not just about race, ethnicity, gender, but also environmental protection, climate change, public health, social justice, very increasingly broad categories. And so here's where we are. So on the Dear Colleague letter, we have assessed sort of what we do on campus, and we feel very confident that we are in compliance and have been sort of overwhelmingly in compliance. So we do not do any admissions that are illegal. This is all premised on the case against Harvard in 2023, which was focusing on diversity admissions. So our admissions processes are and have been to federal compliance. We, continue to reiterate that faculty have the right to teach and research what it is you are experts to teach and research, and that academic freedom persists. So we are not looking to change courses, degrees, class content, research areas. We are not making any moves to do any of those things. I know those are conversations that are happening on other campuses. We have not done that and continue to assert the right of faculty to make those decisions on your own. In terms of, campus activities, we certainly, are very proud to be an MSI, HSI, and a PZ majority minority, more than 50% first gen. And, that doesn't change under any circumstance. This is who we are as a community, and the community doesn't change. Neither do the activities that we provide, because all the activities we provide to any specific groups are open to everyone, to all groups, right? And so we see ourselves as a university that has been very committed to inclusion and to access and to equity, and that applies to all students. So from a very broad lens, that's where we are. You will notice we haven't made any big significant changes to our website, to our university structure, organization, or other programming. Again, because we don't feel the need to do so, we feel like we were already compliant before. So on the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights complaint, that was based on our alleged engagement with the PhD Project, which is an organization that has supported, minority graduate students at the doctoral level, particularly in business, for many years. UNLV doesn't have a PhD program in business, but if you go to the PhD Project website, you will find that we are listed under master's granting business colleges. And it is true that we have had 3 faculty that we have identified who have participated in different ways in the PhD project. None of those faculty are with us any longer on campus. They left previously. We have no active faculty involved in that program, for better or worse. And I will also note that our current affiliation is through a membership that the College of Business has, the Lee School of Business has, with the PhD project. And that membership was to do recruitment for faculty positions. And that, that membership continues this year. So we are responding to that investigation. We feel very confident that we've done nothing wrong in our participation to recruit faculty. And we're moving forward on that front. When it comes to students and faculty and staff, whether they be international or undocumented or DACA, obviously the fear level increases seemingly daily as we read and watch horrific accounts of things that are happening on or near other campuses around the country. We have not, fortunately, had any of those issues here, and we have not had any indication that we are targeted as such. Our university police department has been a terrific partner. They are working with federal agencies, and what we continue to hear is that, that our international undocumented and DACA students and faculty staff are secure, and that really it is folks who have committed other crimes. So if you have been accused of other felonies or participating in gang activity, then the enforcement may happen, but we are not seeing it beyond those legal boundaries. We have continued to give guidance that should any federal agents appear on campus and ask for information or looking for people, we ask that you immediately reach out to UPD, our University Police Department, and they are trained and prepared to intervene and represent us in those moments to try to resolve the situation. So that should be your first call. And then, of course, we would appreciate being notified here in the Provost and President's office. But again, that's information we think everybody needs to have, but we have no indication that we'll need it. And our greatest hope is that we won't. So that's where we are on that front. And I guess the last thing I'll say before I hand it over to the experts in each of these areas. So on the faculty side, research grants, you're going to hear more about that from our VP for Research, Dr. Hatchett. And so as grants are canceled or frozen or eliminated, we are committed to supporting our community. So we are looking at ways to support our faculty and to think about what this means for you and your research careers and your tenure and your promotion and all of those kinds of things. We're also very committed to the students who are funded on those grants. And you're going to hear from Dean Crittenden. We are committed to supporting all displaced GAs for this semester and looking at ways to continue to do so in the future. And really the bottom line is that our response has been and will continue to be calm, care, kindness, and really approaching this as a one UNLV, right? We are not one office, one department, one college. We are one UNLV, and we will face these, this shifting landscape and these new, sort of external realities as a team together. We will not change our values. Our diversity is our strength. Access means inclusion, and academic freedom and shared governance are at the very heart of everything we do on this campus and will remain so. So I know I said that was the last thing, but I will note just one other thing. The top tier plan remains in place. Strategic plans are most helpful when we have these moments of change and transition and crisis, because they help guide us and keep us on track to our goals and our values. And so we will continue to focus on our top tier vision for this university and how we can support faculty and students to get there. And I have personally been asked and had several colleagues asked quite a bit in the last few days about a rumor about layoffs or about displacing people because of financial uncertainty. And so I hope that what you've heard so far reassures you. There is absolutely no conversation about layoffs or any sort of HR actions for budgetary or other reasons. So I just want to reassure you and ask you to please carry that message back, because that kind of uncertainty is deeply destabilizing and stressful. And in this moment where we have lots of other external realities that are impacting people at a personal and professional level, we really want to tamp down rumors of other things that are not on our plate to worry about. So with that, we'll do a deeper dive. We'll start with Dave Hatchett, our VP for Research, and Dr. Hatchett will talk about federal research. And take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Kate. So good morning, everybody. I would echo what Kate says, and that every time I go talk to a group, I say, take a deep breath, let it out, and try to have some calm, because, faced with chaos, all we can do is respond to the chaos as it comes, and it is chaos. I wish we had more clarity, but I will tell you, from a federal funding landscape in terms of grants, there's not a lot of clarity. So thus far, UNLV has had 13 grants terminated. 3 of those grants never made it to UNLV. They were awarded, and then prior to negotiation and contract execution, they were canceled. There are 10 that have been terminated either as the next cycle, funding cycle is initiated. So these are all being done within the construct of what is the law, and they are based on the EO that was put out by the Trump administration. So What does that mean? It means about $10 million of funding has been terminated. Of that 10 million, 4 million never made it to the campus. 4 million was spent before the termination notice. So roughly 2 million was taken back by the federal government. I will tell you that is very small in comparison to a lot of universities. Our counterparts in the North lost, I believe, 20 million in one day from USAID, for example. That being said, what I would say to faculty who are on this call, we understand this is your life's work, and it's heartbreaking for even us to see this happen because people are being told their work isn't important, which I don't agree with. You know, we can disagree about policy, but somebody's life's work is important in many ways. So what we're trying to do is navigate that as it happens, to be a partner and hopefully provide pathways to additional funding. Because when something like this gets canceled and you're told you will not be funded in this area, you know, you have to make the decision to pivot to something where your expertise can be applied. And that's where we can help, because we can find funding opportunities for faculty to do that. So we are doing that. We are looking at who does it impact? How many people do you have on staff? How many graduate students do you have? And we are coordinating with Kate and Alyssa to get that information as quickly as possible. And I'm a faculty member just like most of you, so I understand the ramifications for promotion and tenure. So we're looking into, you know, how is that being mitigated also? You know, we are very aware that this will disrupt people's you know, life's work. That being said, the way I will end this is saying we are monitoring on a daily basis what is happening and communicating it out as soon as we receive information. Unfortunately, as you will note, we just actually signed on for another NIH lawsuit that's going forward because there is no information coming out, for example, from NIH. There's no information I can convey to faculty that tells them this is what's happening, because many federal funding agencies are not telling anybody what is going on. So we find out when there's a termination. But for example, NIH, you're lucky if you can get a program officer on the phone because there are no numbers for them listed on their website. And so many of them have been fired that nobody knows who their program officer is right now for funded work. So that's the kind of chaos that's being created, and we're here to help you navigate that chaos. That's what we're going to do. So I put into the chat a Google meeting that we are having. The Division of Research is having monthly research drop-ins, basically, where you can come, talk, ask questions, and get feedback on anything you feel you want information on. It's just meant to be, you know, a discussion zone for people and their research. So as you navigate and you see things and you have questions, you know, please reach out. We're happy to be, you know, available to answer any questions that you need. And I will turn it over to Kate again.
Thanks for that, Dave. We're going to ask, I think, Gary Totten, Dr. Totten is our Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, just to say a thing or two about how we're supporting faculty through all of this and the kinds of things we're talking through. And again, you know, I don't know that we have answers yet for lots of these things, but I hope that you find some reassurance in the fact that we're working on responding and generating a sort of new infrastructure, right, to support faculty and students in this moment and beyond. So, Dr. Totten.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's good to be here. So yeah, just a few thoughts. I want to, absolutely reiterate everything Kate said and Dave said about supporting our diverse students and our faculty and staff. And that, as Kate pointed out, most things have not changed for us, right? So I also thought I would just, in relation to the Dear Colleague letter, and some of you are probably aware of this, but I found Barbara Snyder, she's the AAU president. She wrote a response to that letter that's really, really clarifying and useful, I think. And so I would just kind of point you towards that. If you're interested, you could probably just Google Barbara Snyder AAU and find it. One point she makes is that, buried in a footnote in the Dear Colleague letter is the statement that this, does not have the force of law. It does not bind the public. It does not create new legal standards. But then also the letter says, but we will start enforcing, right? And so one thing that I find useful about Snyder's letter is that she points out that contradiction and says, we would like to open a dialogue with, the department and other involved folks. Please be in touch with universities about this. And I hope that will happen. I guess that remains to be seen. But I just wanted to mention that letter because I think it's a useful additional context for this discussion. So of course, the letter can have a chilling effect, but my feeling is that we should, of course, continue to serve our diverse students and support our faculty and staff to the fullest extent possible. I just wanted to mention two ways that you might already be thinking about, but that perhaps will be helpful to you. The first is related back to the grants work that Dave was discussing. I think most people who are involved with grants or are seeking grants probably are doing this anyway, but I would just encourage folks to continue to document the work that you do for the grant, even if you don't receive it. Anyway, make sure that that's documented, the kind of work you've done, the kind of work you did on a grant, despite its elimination. I think it's important to document all of that. So that would be my first comment. The second is, and many of you are probably aware that UNLV does have a tenure flexibility policy and process. And especially if you have had negative impacts related to grant work, I would very much encourage you to consider the tenure flexibility process as a possibility for you. After I'm done talking, I'll drop some links in the chat for both the policy and the form that you use to fill out. Tenure flexibility can go both ways. It can be used
to answer a lot of uncertainty for folks, right?
Somebody. Sorry. The tenure flexibility process can be used to, contract your period of tenure probation, but also to extend it for valid reasons. And this would certainly be a valid reason. You would have to have your supervisor, chair, or director sign off, the dean, and so forth. But I want to throw that out there as a possibility for you to consider if you feel like you've been negatively impacted and it's affecting especially your progress towards tenure and promotion. And so finally, I just want to say, if you'd like to discuss your work as a faculty member with our office, with the Office of Faculty Affairs in any way, I'm very happy to be in touch with you. Please reach out and I will turn it back over to Kate. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Gary. Alyssa is here, Dean Crittenden from the Graduate College, to talk about the impact on graduate students. They're sort of in that double hit, as always, between, the struggles of being a student and facing all of the student challenges in these moments, but then also, training up to be part of the professorate for many of them. And so, Dean Crittenden, can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. Good morning. This should be fairly quick and fairly positive on the grad college side. We have had graduate students who have been impacted by the paused or canceled grants. And we have worked swiftly with the deans of the academic college, the PIs on the grant, and with the Division of Research to ensure that every single displaced GA has been moved onto state funds, and we have yet to see a break in paychecks or a break in service. So what this means is we are working very quickly as soon as we find out that there's an impacted student, and we are working to ensure that we have that smooth transition and that they are covered to the end of the semester. We will continue to do that. We will continue to prioritize getting those students paid and ensuring that they are supported for the rest of the semester. We are also looking at longer term plans that go beyond the spring semester and go into not only next year, but importantly, thinking about how graduate student research can be supported in bigger and more broad ways, given that kind of the position we're in federally, not only with existing grants, but what this might look like for the funding landscape in the future, depending on the topics of interest and the topics of research for those students. So rest assured, as it was said at the top of the meeting, we're sort of in a moment of kind of flux right now, and it's a shifting landscape, but this is top of mind for all of us at the Graduate College, and we will continue to work very closely with the Division of Research to do everything we can to continue to support graduate student research. Our goal is not only just to have students, cross that finish line and complete their degree. Our goal is for them to be successful beyond that as well. And so we're going to do everything we can to increase that support structure so that they are able to do their research and do it well and do it in a really supportive and collaborative environment. We're not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but we are committed to making that happen. I'm happy when it is time for that to answer any questions about more specifics, but just bear in mind that the Graduate College is putting our graduate student researchers front and center right now.
Thank you so much for that, Alyssa. I really appreciate all the work that's happening to protect our GAs in this moment, and we'll figure it out going forward. I have one follow-up question for you, and that is about postdocs. So the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs is also in the Graduate College, and I know that just this week, you've gotten some good news on the postdoc front from HSRU. So do you want to just real quickly share that HSRU update? Because
I
I think
want to
there is
share
some reassurance in
exciting,
this news.
amazing, impactful news, Kate, about our postdocs? Why, yes, I do. I didn't know I was going to be able to share that in this space. So I am absolutely thrilled to share with this group that we have two of our current postdocs at UNLV have been selected for the HSRU, or the Hispanic Serving Research University Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, which is the very first year. It's sort of in its inaugural year. And one of those students, postdocs, is Dr. Juan Andres Pinos Flores in life sciences. And so that's very thrilling for us. And the next is Dr. Rose DeCock, who is in our psychology department. So we're very happy that we have two postdocs who have been selected from UNLV to participate in this really prestigious program. And there will be a UNLV Today story on these two amazing research scientists and the impactful work they're doing. So stay tuned for that. Keep your eyes peeled. It's really important, I think, now more than ever to center the work that's being done, particularly by our junior scholars on campus. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to do that. So we're very happy. Yes. So yay.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Thanks, Kate. That was fun for me to share.
In this moment of retraction, right? We have to celebrate the little wins, and having two HSRU postdocs is a big deal. So thank you. All right. Now we're going to hand it over to Barb Roberts, and Barb is going to talk about two really big things that are being impacted at the moment. Federal funding and enrollment, and what this means for our students. So Barb.
Good morning, everyone. So, like Dave and Alyssa and everyone else, it's really a mixed bag in terms of how these federal administration changes are impacting our students and financial aid. And there's a lot of uncertainty, but I'm going to tell you what I know for now and what I'm looking at almost daily in terms of trying to, kind of monitor these changes. First of all, when the initial letter came out, there was concern amongst our students that federal aid was going to be impacted. And we, as soon as possible, within 24 hours of the letter being released, we did send an email to all students and reassure them that federal aid was remaining intact at least at this point, and that we would continue to monitor the situation and communicate with them as regularly as possible to provide them any updates that may impact their federal funding or their ability to receive federal funding. And so for now, everything that we know is that federal financial aid will remain as it has in terms of entitlement programming. And so what that means is Pell remains as it has been. There's been a lot of talk about it being reduced. We have not seen that as of yet. If it's going to happen, it's not happening for this fall, this coming academic cycle. There is some talk amongst aid administrators that there may be reductions for the next academic year, 26-27, but for now we're taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. Loans are still available for students as well. The tricky part comes in that, currently there's talk that Pell and loans, student financial loans, are going to be moved to separate agencies to be administered. That will be extremely difficult. Because of that, if that could result in delays of our students receiving their aid. And so we are currently working through plans on how we will deal with that as an institution in order to protect our students and their enrollments in case there are delays in them receiving aid. The only truly kind of negative thing that I think that we will have to have more planning for, and we are in discussions about how to plan for this, is for federal work study. That is a program that very unfortunately is seen by the Trump administration as benefiting institutions and not students, because it is to pay students to work at the university. And so, he's seen it really as cushion to our budgets, not as a benefit to students. And while it's both though, right? I mean, it enables us to hire students to do work on our campus and provide them growth and experience while they are attending school, and also provide them with dollars to help fund all of the things that they need while they are attending an institution. That totals about $2.5 million on our campus. And so if that is to be cut, that's going to be an issue. That's $2.5 million that our students don't receive, and it's $2.5 million of labor that the university doesn't have. And so that is something that we are also discussing at higher levels of how to just plan for this in case it's going to happen. So please don't leave this meeting and say, there's no work study. What are we going to do? That's not the case. We have packaged students with work study for fall 25 and spring 26. And we are moving like we're going to have that. We have been provided with an initial number. That's what we get every year. The federal government gives us a number, the amount of federal work study that we have at our disposal. And we've been provided with that at this point. So we don't know that it's going to be cut, but it is something that is still on the long list of things being reviewed to be cut. We are also really monitoring scholarships as they are related to DEI specifically. We have just under about 150 item types is what we call them in financial aid, between endowed funds and funds that are provided to students through CSUN or GPSA. We have roughly, like I said, around 150 scholarships that have language in them that are DEI related. So some of that is citizenship, it's race, ethnicity, it's gender, there's all of these different things that are in there that at this point, we are not doing anything other than cataloging them. We have talked with the foundation several years ago after the SCOTUS decision on admissions came out about revising the way that we do some of these scholarships in anticipation of this moment. Here we are. So we have not yet taken action to have those MOUs revised and to change the requirements to obtain the scholarships, but we at least have identified them in the event that we do need to move on that. The other thing with scholarships is we do have some awards now that the name of the scholarship actually indicates status of some students. And so we are looking to rename scholarships, and we are working with the digital enablement team in IT to kind of go back in history and rename the scholarships as well, so as to not make it clear the citizenship status or immigration status of any particular student. The FAFSA opened. It has had 2 days where it has actually not been able to work, where they had technical issues, and it has taken full days for those during those times for it to be brought back up. We expect that to continue. They have eliminated huge amounts of staff that were directly involved with the FAFSA and with the technology behind that. Our entire contact center in San Francisco was shut down. That was our service group for UNLV. We are assigned to service areas. We don't yet have a service area that we are assigned to. So if there's trouble, we just sort of have to wait it out. But our students don't. What we are doing is using the institutional aid application that we developed last year. Because the FAFSA was opening so late, we essentially made a copy of all of the data points that are asked in the FAFSA, and it is housed in our own system in Salesforce, and the students can complete this form, and it provides us with the same information we would receive from the FAFSA in terms of being able to understand if they will be Pell eligible, what their need is, all of those different things. And so we are asking students to complete both, complete the FAFSA, and many have done so by the deadlines. The continuing student deadline is coming up April the 15th, but we've opened the institutional aid application to our continuing students as well and encourage them to complete that also. And of course, we still have the alternate need form for students who are not able to complete the FAFSA because they are not Title IV funding eligible. And we will use all of those information to make the best awarding decisions that we can. Kind of on that note, it gets me to our enrollment. Right now, enrollment is, I always say I'm cautiously optimistic, and I mean that. I'm never, rarely going to come to you and be like, oh, it's amazing. It's just not what enrollment managers do. But I am cautiously optimistic as to what our enrollment looks like, both in terms of new and continuing. It's interesting because our new enrollment, you think about, all of these things are going to hurt our enrollment. They're concerned about their ability to pay. Students are concerned about their ability to pay. They are concerned about if they happen to have an immigration or citizenship status that might put them at risk by enrolling at the university. We are not seeing that from our local students at this point. We continue to reassure them both that diversity is incredibly important to our university, and we're not backing down from that. I just spoke about it at our first new student orientation on Saturday, and the room full of students, only students, gave me a huge round of applause, and we're so excited to hear that we are, as an institution, are not backing away from that commitment. The parents did so as well. It was separate. And so I kind of expected it from the parents, but the fact that the students were really jazzed about it. And one of them even texted my daughter and said, your mom told us that everything is, that we're going to continue to be committed. We're not changing anything at UNLV right now. And so I was pretty impressed by that. But what we do need to do is continue to leverage our aid in ways that enable us to support students who maybe can't complete a FAFSA, both because they just couldn't make changes. That's what we just ran into, but also for those that, are not Title IV funding eligible. So, our in-state students are who we typically think of in that way, but that's not the only groups that we have coming in that have these issues. We are seeing an increasing number of students from states that are more hostile to students like this. Our numbers in Texas are growing, and they're growing substantially. And there are other places where we're seeing the same kinds of trends, right? Florida is another one. This is the first year we had a regional in that area for the full year, and we've seen a substantial growth in that region. Probably because we're there, but also because of the things that are happening. And then we get to go and say, hey, it's not like this in Nevada, come to UNLV. So like I said, it's a mixed bag. I'm cautiously optimistic. We're still watching it and monitoring it, but things do look good at this point. We are reassuring our continuing students and our new students as much as possible that aid is going to continue as it has, and that their privacy is protected. One of the things that we are doing outside of looking at to rename scholarships for our continuing students is that we are also going to be renewing the pieces of data that are included at UNLV in directory information, just to ensure that there's not anything that we might release as directory information that's not FERPA protected, but could indicate something about a student that we are not trying to do. Like, for instance, participation in a specific student group or student activity. Currently, that is considered directory information. We're going to be reviewing that and taking a harder look at that to see if that truly is something that we are obligated to release. I think the last thing is that our international student enrollment, you all know of our efforts to internationalize in the last few years, and we continue that. There are just some complications, especially on the graduate side around that. A lot of students, specifically graduate students that come to UNLV, are looking to do so with the help of getting a graduate assistantship. And with those, faculty members hanging on to them a little bit tighter, not sure exactly if they're going to have funding or not, it is delaying some of our graduate kind of yeses at this point from international institution or international countries. I will say, though, our apps and our admits are up for both undergrad and grad for international students, so they still want to come. They still want to come to UNLV in increasing numbers, and we just need to be able to find ways to support them and reassure them to actually get them here and enroll. So all in all, we are hanging in there. UNLV is continuing to serve our students both in the Valley, across the nation, and internationally, and we are committed to supporting them as best we can. I said in a webinar with the Chronicle last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know when it was, we can't do everything, but we should do everything that we can. And I think that that's what our marching orders are. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Barb. We are so fortunate to have Barb as our Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management. There are so many moving parts and pieces on a good day and a good semester and a predictable landscape. And in this unpredictable landscape, I mean, we are all here to serve students. And without students, our mission is really compromised. So I think the fact that we are holding enrollment and continuing work to support our students, both new students who are coming in and continuing students, is really, really critical. And it's not about, somebody said to me, oh, it's critical because of the finances. And I suppose, but that's not what we mean. We mean it's critical because, students bring life to this campus. Our mission is to serve them. And so when students trust us, despite all the uncertainty and chaos that they might experience in their worlds, when they trust us to come here and, study and learn and research and engage and change their lives and their family trees, it's pretty amazing. So that's why enrollment matters so much. So while they're here, of course, student life is of the utmost importance. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Rogers, of course, our VP for Student Affairs, to talk about things on the student life side.
Thank you, Kate. And just keeping with the theme, as my colleagues have shared, we know that some of the items in the Dear Colleague letter that came out mentioned housing, it mentioned programming, it mentioned graduation celebrations, among other things. And so one of the things that we've done is just making sure that we stay connected with our students and that we've been having regular meetings with our different student leaders, sharing with them sort of what our positions are, what our interpretations are to the Dear Colleague letter. And in particular to those things, with respect to the housing experience of students, we're not changing anything. We will still have our themed communities. We will just make sure that we emphasize that those themed communities are open to all students to opt into that selection during their application process. Also, we know that for our identity programming, nothing is changing there. We will still do all of our monthly identity programming. We will still make sure we have those different themes within there, and just emphasizing again that, it's open to all students, all UNLV community members to join in to help with the planning and execution of those events. And then also, we know with our graduation ceremonies, as it was mentioned in the letter, what we do is not a graduation ceremony. What we do are cultural celebrations. And so we will continue to do those cultural celebrations while just making sure we make some intentional tweaks to those, just making sure that we promote all of those ceremonies as one, or all those celebrations as one, and that, all students are welcome to participate in one, all, or none at their interest level and availability. And we will just continue down that path. And we, recognize, as we've said, we're a diverse campus, and that's not going to change. And we know that our students are looking for those meaningful experiences while they're here on campus, outside of the classroom. Our students are also looking for community, and we will continue to make sure we emphasize that the programming that we provide is relevant and it addresses those things and needs and reflective of the diverse community that we serve here on campus. And then lastly, we know we were looking at a multicultural center project. We are still moving forward with the viability of that project. We may look to maybe sort of name it Student Activity Center versus Multicultural Center, but it will still do all the same programming and elements that we were going to do in a Multicultural Center, which is really to be sort of the main hub for student programming that we previously described, and then also be a place where we can do a lot of evidence-based experiences and practices, also do a lot of our training out of that location in collaboration with our entire university community. That space will not be centrally controlled by any one entity. That activity center will be available for anyone to book and use for events, activities, programming. And that concludes my update from the Student Affairs lens.
Thanks so much, Keith. Much appreciated. I think just to reiterate there, I mean, the federal laws and the federal executive orders and guidelines are really focused on exclusion and, making sure that we as universities are not excluding any groups. And I will say, I think UNLV has a long history of being truly inclusive. And I think that's why what you're hearing today is that we don't feel a need to make big changes to proactively comply in an overly cautious kinds of way, because all of the specialized programming is always open to all students. All of the special housing floors are open to all students. And so this is just, in this moment, we persist and continue. So anyway, with that, we'll open it up. Would love to hear your thoughts or questions, and we'll do our best to answer.
Okay, so we have two questions right now in the chat. One is in regard to academic freedom. Please remind people on the call that there's a Faculty Senate Academic Freedom and Ethics Committee, which is part of their charge to investigate complaints of violations of academic freedom. So I guess that was just a reminder. And then the second is, do you have a sense for how UNLV or NCHE will respond if threatened by the federal administration regarding campus research and programs? I think many were disappointed in Columbia's response, and they still seem to be on track for losing their funding. Is a UNLV response in that scenario dictated by NCHE? Will there be an opportunity for faculty and student input? That's a couple of questions.
I can try. So what I would say is, look, as we're watching what's happening at Columbia and now Harvard and other places, it's impossible not to think, what if it's us, right? I'd be lying to you if I said it didn't cross my mind, if it didn't keep me up at night, and if I hadn't been thinking about it a lot. On the other hand, it's not us. We are a very different campus and a very different university as a public institution. And it's very hard to deal in hypotheticals at that level, right? When there's so much on the line. It's not a hypothetical about what if something small were to happen that was egregious and offensive. It's what if all of our federal funding went away and we could no longer operate as a university in Nevada, right? And so that's a really big question that we are all thinking through, but it would be impossible to answer what we would do in that situation without knowing all of the details of that situation, right? And so, I'm gonna hedge that answer a bit, not because I don't want to share it, but because, if that problem came knocking on our door, we'd have a lot of conversations to be having. What I can tell you is vehemently yes to the other two parts of the question. One, would NSHE be involved? 100% absolutely. We report to NSHE in the state of Nevada. And so, like other things that we deal with, we are not alone as a standalone private university would be. We are part of a system. So yes to that. And yes, emphatically to, the engagement of faculty, staff, and students at any moments like that. We have a long history of that, whether it was COVID or in response to the 12/6 crisis or other things. In those moments, we, tap our, well-established infrastructure of committees and different voices on campus to not just give input, but to guide us in our decisions. And so I can say with certainty, regardless of who ends up being president or provost, that I trust that that will be our path forward if we're faced with really big, tough questions. We'll continue to do what we do now, which is talk to each other, have open conversations, ask for input, and do our best to maintain our values and protect our community in these moments. I don't know if anybody else, looks like Dave has some thoughts.
Yeah, what I would add to that is we've already engaged with the state and signed on to multiple lawsuits. So we are not, as much as people, we don't share what we are doing on an everyday basis. We are actively engaged in making sure that faculty have the right to do the research they want to do. In terms of the EO, though, the EO will be implemented. There's no way around that. I don't know what's going to happen with the Department of Education and that funding. But for sure, the EO, it's being implemented as each grant comes up for, the yearly renewal, it's being implemented. So that's when we see grants be terminated. But if we believe that there's something that's happening, we will certainly listen to faculty. We will take what they have to say to NSHE. And as a group, we talk, UNR, DRI, CSN, all of us talk about these things and how it impacts so that we can get a broader perspective and discuss with NSHE what are the true impacts of what's happening. So we're not sitting, I just want everybody to understand, yes, we will listen. 2, we will take your concerns seriously and move them forward. And we'll do that in multiple ways.
Thanks for that, Dave. Yeah. And, it is important to note that we try to communicate out, but there's so much that's shifting that it's hard to know exactly what to say in a moment to make sure that it's still accurate and a true reflection in the next moment, right? And so, as Dave notes, there is a lot happening sort of behind the scenes in terms of us responding in what I think are, strategic and thoughtful ways, again, guided by who we are as a university, right? That hasn't changed.
Jose?
Thank you. I just want to chime in real quick to Kate's point about, last week in our IDEA Council meeting, for those of you who know, that's the Diversity Council to NSHE. The chancellor was on there and she did recommit their commitment to everything diversity in terms of the work that we do and how IDEA functions and what we do to support both INSHE and the campus. But I would put this out there that, there's in recent months, there has been some conversations with some of the regents in regards to where they might support or not support diversity or some version of it. So as I put on my advocacy hat for this office and the work that we've done and the work that's been done over many years to elevate it to the level of where we are on campus, I would say, especially for those tenured faculty members who are out there, that if you have a chance to stop by a Board of Regents meeting sometime in the near future and make some public comment on behalf of the work we do on support of all of the diversity of our students, staff, and faculty, I think that would be well received, at least from the part of the diversity officers across the institution, because that is a concern of where the anti-DI stuff might come forward in Nevada. So just as an FYI, and there will be, the chancellor also alluded to this, that in June, there will be a change in leadership amongst the regents as to who's chair and vice chair and all that. So again, I would tell you, and I've had this conversation with other tenured faculty members, that for those who are in that position and you are able to say something, that it would be really well received to have that kind of support during the public comments, because I think they need to hear it. And, I think they get it, but I still think they need to hear it because there are some who feel that, maybe it's not needed. And so I would ask folks to consider that. And if you're able to do that, please step up and make that case in the next couple of months, because I think it is going to be a critical time for where diversity goes or what we look like and how we're able to serve what continues to be the diversity of our students. So thank you.
I want to thank everyone this morning, especially Dr. Korgan. Thank you so much for pulling this conversation together. For me personally, it is refreshing, if you will, to have heard from so many of you about the direction that UNLV at least plans to go with all of what many of us, as David was saying, would say is chaos. Understanding that the university is taking steps, is thinking about many of the things that we think about. I'll do a pitch for intersection, that the students talk to us every day and have these questions. And so I'm happy to have been able to hear a lot about what is going on with the university, and that certainly our core value, our core mission of being of service to our students and recognizing that our students are from diverse populations and certainly first generation, is encouraging and enlightening for me. And I really want to once again thank you all for joining us this morning. Thank you again, Kate and Barb and David and everyone else who was here for a very enlightening conversation. Thank you.